Hey everyone, welcome to a special edition of Tunnel Vision. It is National Signing Day, National Letter of Intent Day, and we want to talk about USC Trojans, 2021 recruiting class. Now, I'm in studio by myself. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, and we were supposed to have Gerard Martinez and Chris Trevino. You can see their Twitter handles on the screen right now, but this was a last-minute call to the bullpen because there were some technical challenges in getting these guys connected. So we got Shotgun Spratling and Ceyair. We just kind of rearranged the faces a little bit. But thank you guys for joining me. How are you guys doing?
Hanging in there. I mean, USC finishes up their signing day class. You know, there's still one big name out there, obviously, and there'll probably be some more transfer portal options that they'll be looking at. But as far as their signing day class, they finished up today getting a big commitment from Raesjon Davis to add to that class. So good for them. Much different for me, and I don't know about you guys, but I actually slept last night, and I got a full 5 hours in. It's not usual for a signing day. Normally it's like 3 in the morning. I'm trying to finish up the last run of classes or stories to be ready for the class as it's announced, but a little bit different today.
It was a little bit different. I just changed your Twitter handles, so you got your actual handles now. Keely might be frozen in time, so there's even more fun going on here. Looks like we got Keely. I got her name up there, and then she's frozen. Keely, hopefully we'll get you back here in a minute. Yeah, sorry. So we tried to put this together last minute. Clay Helton had a press conference at noon, and we were going to do the show soon after that at 1. And we tried to get those guys connected, and for whatever reason that didn't happen. So we'll just kind of give you some recaps of what was going on. But Clay Helton's presser, Shotgun, I think there was, it's some interesting stuff there as far as, okay, maybe not. It wasn't that interesting. There just wasn't a whole lot said,
He didn't say anything.
Yeah.
He didn't say. I don't understand. On National Signing Day, obviously they've signed the bulk of their class already on the early signing period. I think they had 3 guys to talk about: Korey Foreman, Ceyair Wright, and Raesjon Davis. There is so much you could have talked about with those 3 guys, and Clay Helton barely talked about any of them. He talked a little bit about Korey Foreman as elite pass rusher, and then later, he was asked about what was your reaction when you found out that Korey Foreman was going to sign, and he went off on some other tantrum, but he didn't really talk about, I was super excited. This guy's going to be a game changer for us, we think. He was asked if any of the, there's a bunch of defenders in this class, if anybody can be an immediate contributor. And his reaction was, each could help contribute and some significantly. But he talked about their character and maturity, but didn't talk about any of the individual players. So it was, I don't know, there was so many opportunities where he could have been really hyping up some of these players, which is what you want to do on a signing day, and talk about how great this class is as a group, but also the individuals. And he just didn't do that at all. So there wasn't much to come out of it. We talked a little bit about the transfers. He talked a little bit about the impact of certain guys like Korey Foreman, what he did for the rest of the class and maybe the next class. But, talking about what he does on the field, there wasn't much there.
Yeah, there really wasn't. I got to, he talked about some of the strategies. They wanted to secure more of the West Coast talent, getting guys like Raesjon Davis that, ends up picking USC today, signing Ceyair Wright. They talked about him quite a bit. And then Korey Foreman. Those are the kind of guys that he talked about the most, 2 of the guys that signed today. But also he talked about, hitting the transfer portal. And, Katie Dixon's a really interesting guy. I got to ask Clay Helton about that. And again, I don't think there was a whole lot of substance there. I wanted to see how they're going to use them or how this came about. And, obviously you want to replace guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and replace guys like, Tyler Vaughns. And he's someone that could come in and maybe play in that slot role, do some different things. But again, I don't know if did you get much from what he was talking about with Katie Dixon? Because I think he can be an exciting player for USC.
Not as far as usage. The one thing he did talk about was his leadership and the fact that, he used the analogy that people are either thermostats or thermometers. And, when you're in the room, do you control the temperature, or are you the one controlling the room, or are you the one that's kind of being controlled by what is going on around you? But he's going to be a senior leader for that group, and they got some young wide receivers. So I think that was an important thing to note. But he didn't really talk too much about, his what he can do on the field for them. He was asked about the impact, for the other transfers, and he said they all fit needs that they have from losing in the NFL draft, but he didn't really talk about how they fit those needs. Didn't talk about any of the individuals, whether it be Xavier Alford or Ishmael Sofsher. Didn't talk about what those guys can bring to fill in for Jay Toya and fill in for Talanoa Hufanga, even though that's kind of what you're supposed to glean from it, I guess. Can Xavier Alford be a hybrid guy like Talanoa Hufanga? We won't know until, I guess, we talk to Todd Orlando or see the guys in the spring ourselves, hopefully. So there were more question marks that were kind of left unanswered about the actual play on the field today.
Yeah, this is turning into being like a little instant analysis between me and Shotgun. We lost Keely, we couldn't get Chris in, we couldn't get Gerard in. What, I don't know. This is crazy, but whatever. We're gonna kind of plow forward. Let me play. So a couple of the guys that signed today, the high school players. I'm gonna play the Raesjon Davis video for you. You might not be able to hear it, Shotgun, but everyone can hear it at home. So we'll play this one for you.
I ain't gonna cry about it. I'm gonna be about it. This is California. We have some of the greatest athletes, skilled players. You have to be.
I'm the man in my city. Book bag 350 cash. Got my hand on my blicky. My swag on dance for real. First come, then I'm paying a bill. I can put the ball in the end zone, put a bad
for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be taking my talents to the University of Southern California.
So Raesjon Davis making it official. He is going to be a USC Trojan.
I'm excited to join the Trojan family, to bring more championships to the culture. I can't wait to get it started.
So some cool stuff there. Oh, we lost Keely here. I'll fix the video real quick. But while we're talking, Shotgun, get your thoughts on the Raesjon Davis commitment.
Yeah, Raesjon Davis, the local guy, he committed to LSU initially, but USC was always in the mix. Seeing him commit again on 24/7 Sports, his live show this morning. The guys did a great job on that show. If you were able to catch some of it, they had three live commitments on there. Raesjon Davis being the last one. Picked USC, had went on a visit to Ohio State, so there was some talk about, hey, is Ohio State if they pushed ahead, but Raesjon Davis commits to stay at home at USC. And, he's a guy that grew up a USC fan. He later posted, a photo of him with Pete Carroll, a photo with some USC gear and some trophies when he was a youth player. So, he's grown up a USC fan, and he's going to bring a unique dynamic to that linebacker group, I think. So getting him to stay home, I think, is really big because of what he brings in this class as far as a linebacker that can go sideline to sideline. But he's a versatile guy. No one really talks about it, but he had double-digit sacks his junior year. I don't remember if he followed up on that his senior year, but he was great as a pass rusher coming off the edge for modern day as well. So you can use him in that way. He's a guy that we've seen multiple times at 7-on-7 out there looking better than some cornerbacks. The way he can cover slot guys and just being able to run 20 yards down the field, turn his head, be able to make plays on the ball, diving, making interceptions. Got some good ball skills as well. So he's a unique player in that role. And he's not. Maybe he feels kind of that Talanoa Hufanga void because he's a versatile defender. Now he's not going to play safety and not going to play the same spot, but just his versatility allows you to do different things with him. And that's what Talanoa Hufanga was so special about him is. You can use him blitzing. You can use him dropping. You use him, lining up as a linebacker. Where Raesjon Davis, maybe you bring him up to the line of scrimmage. Maybe you drop him into coverage. You can do some different things. And he's big enough to take care of the run in the middle of the field as well. So I think he's a really big pickup in this class for them. And picking him up today, that gives them a little bit more momentum. They've got some momentum already in modern day as far as, picking up Damani Jackson a couple last week or 2 weeks ago in the 2022 class. So I think they got some good momentum going forward with this recruiting class. And maybe is that enough to maybe sell JT Tuimoloau out? That's a big question. If you can talk him into, hey, we see you as the guy that plays in between Drake Jackson and Korey Foreman. That's a potential selling point. And we've got these guys that are going to play behind you with Raesjon Davis and, the linebackers that they've got in this class, but also the safeties. Hey, those guys are going to come down in the box and keep some of the pressure off of you. I think you can really sell with what they brought in this class in particular, a lot of things to a guy like JT Tuimoloau who's going to wait until April before he makes his decision.
There's another video we have. This is a player that announced on January 2nd, along with Korey Foreman, but didn't sign yet. Just signed today, so we'll play the Ceyair Wright one. And Helton had a lot to say about him, just with the. We'll get into that too with the name, image, and likeness. But let me play the video for you.
Don't cry about it, I'm gonna be about it. This is California. We have some of the greatest athletes, skilled players. You have to be.
I'm the man of my city. Book bag 350 cash. Got my hand on my blicky. My swag on dance for real. First come, then I'm paying a bill. I can put the ball in the end zone, put a bet.
So for the next 3 to 4 years, I'm gonna be going to University of Southern California.
What's up, Trojan family? My name is Ceyair Wright. I'm a cornerback. I go to Loyola High School. I can't wait to get up there and make some plays. Fight on.
Some cool video productions there. I know we talked about Wright before, but any thoughts on him coming in and maybe replacing a guy like Elijah Griffin? There's some similarities there.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think is going to be in competition for the backup role. He's going to come in and he's going to be able to help them, as well as Prophet Brown, the other cornerback in this class that they brought in. I think both those guys will be vying for those backup roles behind Chris Steele and Isaac Taylor-Stewart, because I think the guys behind them, they're pretty raw and haven't had a lot of playing time, as far as Dorian Hewitt, Jaden Williams, and Adonis Oti. So who's going to be able to step in and be that third cornerback? And then, hey, if you have somebody go down, is it one of those true freshmen being able to step in? I think Ceyair Wright is good enough to be able to step in immediately and contribute that way. Now, you don't necessarily want to have to throw him in there and be a starter from day one, but I think he's a guy that can work into the mix. And maybe we see, if he earns the trust of Dante Williams, maybe we see similar to what we saw with Adoree Jackson, Imam Marshall, and Jack Jones, where your freshman year, you don't start, but you start playing, you get a couple series every game. And maybe that's what we see from those young guys, where they get a series or two, you start to get to some playing time, some experience, so they get used to the speed, see them on special teams a little bit. And then by year two, that's when you're talking about, hey, can they compete and take over the starting spot?
We show those videos. This is definitely something new. I asked Clay Helton about the name, image, and likeness, even though it's not solidified. But stuff like that, those video productions, that's all part of the resources that USC's been provided and is going to help with recruiting. What did you think about that, like how those videos turn out and what they're selling these kids on, what they could do in the future with all that name, image, and likeness stuff?
Yeah, that's one of the things that Clay Helton did talk about in this, was the ability to have the resources, that Mike Bone and Brendan Sosna had supplied them with additional resources that helped out their recruiting efforts. They're recruiting as a team, but it was important to have those hires that helped out, behind the scenes. He said that, Spencer Harris and Gavin Morris are great at their jobs, but they needed some help. And by getting some extra staff there in the recruiting office, but then also the creative elements of it with the video and the digital creation and stuff, where you're being able to see all these cool graphics and stuff, things that really catch the eye of players. So the signing day stuff is more for the next class. Actually, it's a good token for those guys, like, oh, this is a cool video, and they can tweet it out. But it's more aimed at the next group of recruits, saying, oh man, did you see what USC did with their recruiting videos? And they did for my guy, whoever it is that that's a year older than you, for Raesjon Davis, or or for Ceyair Wright. Did you see their video? And then you go from there, and that you're attacking that next group of class. So I think it's important to have those elements, and I think they've really built that back end up, which you need, because USC before was recruiting basically on USC tradition, which is great. But is that selling the 16 to 17-year-old? I don't know if they're sold just on the tradition of what happened. Even in 2004, the national championships, the Pete Carroll era. That's a while back for these kids. They were, in diapers at that time for some of them. So you're seeing that we're seeing some of these kids are growing up that, haven't seen USC as a traditional power. So now you got to sell them on something else. And it starts with doing those things as well. And then you can also sell the national championships, the Heisman trophies from yonder years. So I think it's a little bit of an element of both. You got to have that in this day and age with recruiting. And then, you talked a little bit about it, but the brand the name, image, likeness, and be able to brand yourself and branding and stuff like that. I think that they're doing that better, and they're jumping in on that before, instead of waiting and saying and trying to catch up later. They're jumping in feet first now, rather than having to catch up to some of the other teams when they've struggled on the field a little bit the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think Clay Helton talked about being proactive with that. And that's something, they weren't exactly proactive when the early signing period started. They were thinking like, oh, it's going to go by. But this one they were. And I feel you got to give them credit for that. But also knowing this was going to be a plus. Like whenever you're recruiting for a university, there's going to be pluses and minuses. Like if you're recruiting, you're not recruiting to weather if you're in Omaha or something, right? You're in Lincoln, Nebraska or Michigan. But, you can do that in Miami or you can do that at USC. You're not really recruiting like tradition as much if you're talking about Oregon State. I mean, there's different things that you want to go to. We don't know all the rules for name, image, and likeness, but the fact that they're being proactive and kind of putting the ideas out there of what they can do, it seemed to be pretty popular, especially for a guy like Ceyair Wright, someone that's going to be, in the entertainment industry. What better place to do that than obviously in Los Angeles?
Exactly. You're selling these players who have seen, you see Tom Brady with TB12, and you see all these pro athletes that have their own, brand already. They have their own logo, they have their own brand. It's not just that they're a name, and it's not just their name as a player. It's also what they do, and for some of these players that have philanthropic, adventures or ventures that they want to eventually be able to do as well. It's about building all that stuff now, and to be able to sell yourself. And you see Korey Foreman already has a K4 brand at USC, has a logo and everything. You look at Ceyair Wright, and obviously he wants to be in the entertainment business. Well, obviously USC and UCLA would be two of the top choices there. It's in Los Angeles. You're looking at your future earnings potential and, being able to make connections. When you talk about, if you're Ceyair Wright and you go, hey, I know you just work with Ryan Coogler at, working with Space Jam 2 because he's one of the executive producers. Hey, he went to USC. That's a selling point. And, if you're able to make that connection, if he didn't have the connection already, then that's another connection he's able to make. You're able to sell those type things. So I think that there's a lot of things obviously USC can sell, and name, image, likeness is you're only going to be able to sell that more in Los Angeles rather than, being in a place, like in Oregon State.
Yeah. I want to talk about the rankings a little bit. We're going to keep this short because we wanted to have Gerard and Chris Trevino on. I will try to do another video. Won't be live, but we'll try to get them on maybe a Zoom or something and get you guys to hear from them too. But we just want to kind of give you a quick breakdown of what was going on with the recruiting class. Last I checked, Shotgun still number 8 in the country. Maybe it was a quick move up. I think Texas A&M might have got an extra signing and jumped ahead of USC. But, it's a top 10 class. Getting some of the big names at the end, you kind of feel like it's a fair ranking about where USC should be?
Yeah, I think so. And, USC did a really good job in this class of attacking the defensive side of the ball and got a lot of playmakers there. They've got to add some to the offensive side. But what's not included in these rankings are the transfers. And I think USC is doing a really good job of attacking the transfer portal right now because they're attacking the classes where they struggled. So the 2020 class obviously really was the worst ever at USC, and they're attacking some of that with a guy like Xavier Alford. He's a second-year guy, so he would have been in that class. Those are the type players where they're filling in the talent void that was left. And by some of the players that have left, from USC, you're filling in from the transfer portal, not only the guys that are leaving for the NFL, but also the classes that, struggle with. So I think they've done a smart job of attacking in those classes in particular. So they're getting some talent, and those guys aren't included in the recruiting rankings, but they're a big part of this class as well.
Yeah, and still behind Oregon. Oregon's ranked 6th. It'll be the number 2 class in the Pac-12, but definitely made some progress. They don't count the transfers. It'll be interesting to see when the class rankings come out, the talent index for the overall talent. So that will take into account transfers, and they use their high school rankings. So we'll see where USC falls there. If Oregon is able to pass USC, or if the Trojans will still be the most talented. Keontae Ingram was one guy not listed, but he's coming to USC. That just hasn't been signed or all the stuff done yet from what we've been told. I'll put a picture up of him up there. He's a big part of that transfer. I mean, you needed to get a running back in this class. So getting another running back out of the transfer portal is big for USC.
Yeah, exactly. You needed two running backs in this class, and you weren't able to get that, with incoming freshmen. So went to the transfer portal, and hey, now you got a guy who's shown that he can do it on the Division I, the Power 5 level. Keontae Ingram was a starter at Texas and put up some good numbers there initially. Obviously, he got passed over and had some fumbling issues this year, but you could correct that, and he should be a guy that should be in the mix for some carries this year. So that's a big pickup for them, especially when they've struggled so much recruiting the running back position from the high school ranks. Being able to get Brandon Campbell from Texas this year is great, but you needed two guys just because of the depth issues you're going to have there, especially when Vi Malapai and Stephen Carr leave. So getting them in was big there. Same thing with Katie Nixon at the wide receiver spot. You just don't have a ton of bodies at those two offensive positions. So getting some talented transfers that have proven themselves is, I think, even much better. You don't have the full allotment of eligibility there, but you bring them in, they can be impact players for you immediately. So good job by them on the transfer portal, and that's something they still will look at. Clay Helton talked about, he was asked if they still have room in the class. Obviously, because they only took 12 guys last year, you can count back early enrollees. So, there's no issue there as far as the initial counter of 25 a year. USC will have plenty of room for that. It will be the 85 mark that for total team that will be interesting for them there. So that's interesting. Clay Helton also did say that and now he sounded a little confused by the question, but he did say the 2020 seniors that have not entered the portal or not entered the NFL draft will all be back. So we'll probably have to get some clarity on that a little bit more, but there's 6 or 7 guys that we're still waiting to hear from, Matt Fink and some of those offensive linemen. So we'll see if those guys are indeed all back. So that was one of the things to take out of the conversation. And then you talked about Oregon being ahead of USC, right? I don't know what you thought, but I asked Clay Helton, if he thought their whole mantra was take back the West. So it was a simple question: do you think you took back the West? And he didn't really answer that one either.
No, it was there was interesting because you asked questions about Dante Williams, and he's one that was talking about that quite a bit. And you felt like he didn't want to give too much credit there. I don't know if you got the same feeling because it's like, yeah, we didn't really have good recruiters before, so we brought in a good one, and man, he's just kicking ass, But you felt like it was sort of like tempering, like, well, it's a team thing, but yeah, he's good, and he's also a really good coach. It's like, yeah, sure. But I mean, you didn't have a T. Martin on staff. He comes in and he's your T. Martin guy. And, that's kind of on Clay Helton. Why didn't you have a dynamic recruiter? Why wasn't there some kind of Dante Williams on the staff the couple of years before? But, they were taking back the West, but you didn't get a better class than Oregon. And it was sort of kind of walking around a little bit like it always comes back to winning championships, which is this. It's kind of a buzzword now, and it's like, well, what championship are we talking about? Is a Pac-12 South winning the Pac-12 South? Is that a championship? The Pac-12 USC fans want national championships. They don't want to hear about this, Pac-12 South champions or runner-up champions in the Pac-12 South, stuff like that. Like, they don't want to hear those things. So, yeah, it wasn't a great answer, but it's hard to take back the West if Oregon's still going to have the best class in the conference.
Yeah, not only did you lose to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, but you also have lost the recruiting rankings for a second year in a row to them. I think that's 3 straight for Oregon, maybe in the Pac-12 as far as the Pac-12 title. I'm not certain on that, but Clay, when I asked him that, Clay said we had success in areas we needed, and then he eventually rounded the question back to talking about their ultimate goal is for them to bring those players in to win championships, and he thinks that the guys they brought will be a significant step towards that. But they've got to show it on the field, and if they do continue to show it, and that's one of the things he did say was that he thought that them playing this year definitely contributed to their recruiting class, and I completely agree with him there. Without them being able to get on the field, you're coming off the poor season before, so you can't really get that taste out of people's mouths. But you're able to show some improvement. You're able to show that you're developing some players on the defensive side of the ball in particular to be able to bring in this big defensive class. So I think that was big for them. Now, if they can continue that and if they show improvement in the win-loss record next year, I think you're back in the mix for that top 5 class for USC going forward. And off to a good start with Damani Jackson already in the class and him being a guy that other people are going to rally around and want to play with.
Yeah. You mentioned the the number of scholarship players, and he said there's plenty of room, but only signing 12 guys last year. He keeps coming back to it was a big man class, and that's why it wasn't, it's like, okay, you said it the first couple of times. You don't need to keep saying it anymore. No one's buying that. But whatever. We know Clay Helton. He's going to say, he's going to put a positive spin on things. That's just him. You can't be surprised by it. But the fact that it continues on. But it is interesting because it was such a small class. Then you get to, add these early enrollees. And usually sometimes, it depends on how many spots are available. There's a ton available. But you also need those players to be able to enroll early. If you only have a couple guys enroll early, they're the only ones that can count backwards. Clay Helton said 14 guys are going to be available in the spring, and I think some of those are transfers as well, right? But 14 of the dudes, that's a lot that is going to be available to take part in spring football, and everyone else will come back and join the team in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, if they're able to get a full spring in, full summer workouts, this is really big for the development of the team going forward. I think that was one of the big issues with the offensive line. They moved 4 different guys that were going to start this year. And those guys they got one spring walkthrough practice, basically. They had shells on, I think it was. So that was all they got in the spring. They didn't get the summer player run practices. They didn't get all that. They had a little bit of a shortened fall camp as well. And it was obviously there's a lot of different things that are going on with all the COVID restrictions and protocols and whatnot. So you didn't have that same development period that you normally would. If they're able to get back and have a normal spring, I think that's going to be really big. Getting those extra guys in. Now, you're replacing some big-time players on the defensive side of the ball in particular, but you got to figure out the offensive line as well. And I think you'll have a big opportunity if you can get those guys in early. Those guys will help push, the older guys as well, and it just increases the competition. You're going to have more than 85 players in camp, I believe, with the seniors being able to stay. I think you'll be around 85 or so. So you should have a really good spring camp, and it's not like a lot of times in spring you're left with a walk-on has to play and is in the starting role because you had a senior leave and you have a guy's coming off surgery and you don't have that early enrollee coming in yet. So this year I think that they're going to be better competition in the spring just because they're going to have more depth readily available on the roster. With a shorter season, you don't have as many injuries and off-season surgeries and stuff, but also bringing in those 14 guys. I think it's going to be really big for them if they can get that full spring in.
Yeah, so we're hopeful for that. I know Keely gave you the Debbie Downer icon on Twitter when you were like, well, that's if there's going to be spring football. But they're hopeful. They're supposed to start early April. We'll see where we are pandemic-wise and stuff. They were able to practice in the fall, so you're hopeful that they'll be able to do stuff in the spring. Not sure what we're going to be able to do, if we're going to be able to cover the team or not in person. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to do all that kind of stuff and see, especially these new guys coming in. We haven't got to see really the new defensive staff and their work, and you like to see what Clay McGuire is able to do. We'll be able to check out some of the Instagram stuff, like what as far as Robert Steiner and the strength and conditioning program goes. We can check out some of that stuff too. But all that we will have. Okay, so later in the week we're going to get Clay McGuire, USC's new offensive line coach, and also Seth Dagey, the new tight ends coach, who was promoted from an analyst role to now the tight ends coach. We're going to get them on Friday, so we'll be able to talk with those guys. I got some questions about, can we talk to the new strength staff? I requested that, and those guys will not be available at this time, but maybe after the winter workouts towards spring football, we'll be able to talk to some of those guys because it's all new faces. But yeah, it'll be interesting, Shotgun, to see what's available, what we can do, because it will be a really interesting spring football for USC with all this new talent and, coming off of a 5-1 season that they're going to try to build on in 2021.
Do you want to rapid fire some questions here, Ryan? Let's some in the YouTube chat here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Coley asked, which Pac-12 team had the biggest surprise for you?
I haven't analyzed all the classes and stuff yet. I think Cal did pretty good. I have to go back and look, but Marshall Sherrington, who came over from Cal, he helped them to get a top 25 class. The fact that Oregon is still up there, they get the top couple of tackles in the West. That's I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's pretty good moves there. Stanford, I think they've done better too. They weren't as good. I don't think they have as good as class they had last year, but they got Austin Uke today. out of Texas, another good offensive lineman that USC was after. So, I mean, there's some, USC might be the biggest surprise that they turned around from number 64 to number 8.
I mean, another one that stood out to me today, at least today, was maybe not the overall class, but Arizona. I think Jed Fish has come in and they've done a good job of being able to stack some talent in that class, and because they've got there's a big talent discrepancy between where Arizona was this year to the rest of the Pac-12, especially with the opt-outs that they had on the defensive side. They were playing walk-ons at the linebacker spots most of the time. To be able to come in, and they got some transfers from everyone from Gunnar Cruz from Washington State to Gunnar Maldonado. They're really going for the Gunners, apparently. Gunnar Maldonado from Northwestern. But they were bringing some guys back to Arizona. Those guys are both Arizona prospects out of high school. So that's something interesting because there's been a lot more talent in Arizona in the last few years. We'll see if they can continue that trend. But they kind of surprised me a little bit today. Brendan Jones asked, so talking about Clay Helton. He talked up the number 56 ranked class, but not the top 10 class. Yeah, it was a little bit surprising, just as far as not as much emphasis on the individuals, I guess. He talked a lot more just in generalities and kind of the basics, but didn't talk up any of the individual players, which is what I would do if I had the number one player in the country in Korey Foreman.
Yeah, they talk about him.
At least a 3 or 4 minute spiel talking about how Korey Foreman is great, and how well we did to get this number one player, but he didn't necessarily do that.
And these are different than the kind of in-person ones where we would go down to campus and Clay would talk or whatever. And sometimes they would almost go through the list and kind of give you a few superlatives on any of the, all of the players. It's a different feel now. I think they wanted to put a lot of room for questions, and they allowed a bunch of questions. We're not necessarily enamored with some of the answers we got, but there was a lot of time allocated for questions.
Yeah, so we'll see as they progress. We'll see those guys hopefully on the field, and they can make their own statements then.
Yeah.
Keith Morton asked, why should USC win the Pac when Oregon has the number 3 class in the country? I don't understand why USC is automatically penciled in for Pac-12 champs. Oregon is the Pac-12 favorite, period. I don't know if he's an Oregon fan or not. I think the biggest difference there, Ryan, and I'll get your thoughts as well, but is quarterback play. They've really struggled with their quarterback play. I really like the stuff that Joe Moorhead's doing as their offense coordinator. And his second year, I think, at Penn State, they really took a big jump. But Keaton Slovis, is even when he struggled this year, still a much better quarterback than what Oregon had this year, especially in that Pac-12 championship game where they didn't play very well at all.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck. I mean, if you're going to spell your name like that, you can't say it's Shuck. Like it has to be Shaw or something. So that's probably part of the problem at their quarterback spot for Oregon. Just kidding. But, I think it's a legit concern. They do bring in Tim DeRuyter from Cal as the defensive coordinator, replacing Andy Avalos. I think Oregon's still going to be the favorite. What I want to see, I think it's July or August, is when 24/7 Sports comes out with their talent composite. USC's been number 1 in the Pac-12 for I don't know how long, but forever pretty much. This could be the year Oregon surpasses USC and has a little bit more talent overall on the roster. But like Shotgun said before, they've had the best recruiting class, the last 3 years. That's significant. And to me, Oregon's still going to be the favorite in the Pac-12. And I picked them as the favorite last year, when not a lot of people did. Now, they didn't even win the North, but they end up, winning the championship. But a lot of, losing the whole offensive line, losing the, Justin Herbert, tore it up in the NFL for the Chargers. That was a rebuilding year, and they won the Pac-12. So there's no reason in my mind that you wouldn't say that Oregon's going to be the favorite. USC will probably still be the favorite in the South. Trojans could still be more talented than Oregon. They could still, who knows? They might be picked to win the whole thing. But for me, for Oregon winning it in a weird year, but also a rebuilding year, that bodes well for what they could do in 2021.
I would like to point out that I did not pick Oregon to win the Pac-12 North. I picked Washington, and I was correct.
They didn't play in the championship game, though. I don't know what, you seem like you were wrong.
I picked the Pac-12 North, so therefore I won. I didn't say it because I don't think we made picks on who would actually win the Pac-12 initially. But when we talked about it during the pandemic and all the lockdown stuff, when we were looking for topics, that was one of the things. Just because they had so many opt-outs on that defensive side, I was questioning that. But that area should be a strength next year. I think they got to play some younger guys on that defensive side. You get Kayvon Thibodeau back, they're going to be pretty good on the defensive side. And if they continue to turn out offensive linemen, that you're always going to be in a game if you can run the football.
Yeah.
So that's a big question for USC going forward. But Oregon has done a great job recruiting the offensive linemen and developing them as well. AKA Boone, with no West Coast high schools playing football this year, are the West Coast high school recruits underrated or overrated since their ratings are based on junior stats?
It's tough. I mean, I think if you were a stud as a junior, they're not going to knock you because you didn't play your senior year. But there's just opportunities like the Jackson Darts of the world ends up being like the Max Preps Player of the Year. He wouldn't have got that if he was playing in California. He's in Utah. So I think there's opportunities lost, but I don't think you were going to get dinged as much if you were great and then you didn't get to play. It is really unfortunate that we didn't get to see a lot of these guys play high school football. I mean, it's kind of a chore sometimes covering high school football games. You're going like on a Friday and then you got to go cover USC on Saturday. But there's a fun element to it. And it's invaluable when you're able to tell stories of like, oh, yeah, that kid signed. Like, I remember the game I went to against, Sarah and he did this and blah, blah, blah. Like that stuff is kind of cool. And not being able to do that for a whole year is just kind of head scratching. So I don't think they were dinged as much, but there's just less opportunities for someone to bubble up and say, wow, who's this senior? I mean, just even Austin Uke, right? Like he was a guy with a Holy Cross offer and he's going to Stanford now. Like if he's playing in California, he's probably not going to Stanford, right? Oh, I think Shotgun froze too. Well, we've had our technical difficulties here for sure. I thought he was just giving me this smug look, but it just kind of froze up. So I think it's a good opportunity to end the show. Sorry that it didn't go exactly as planned. We wanted to let you guys hear from Gerard, Martinez, and Chris Trevino. So I will try to work something out later this afternoon with those guys. But since it's just me and Shotgun, and Shotgun's now frozen. We had Keely for a minute in the beginning, and she was out. But thanks so much for watching this kind of hokey version of our Tunnel Vision signing day. But hope you enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.